Welcome back, everyone. For today's deep dive, we'll be tackling a subject that's absolutely vital for any Marine, MCDP 10, Chapter 10.
Other tactical operations.
Right. It's all about those situations where you need that classic Marine Corps flexibility and adaptability. And even though we haven't worn the uniform, we have a deep respect for what you do and the challenges you face.
Absolutely. What's fascinating with this chapter is that it really highlights how complex these operations can be. You might initially think of them as mostly focused on the ground, but they involve the whole MGTF, the entire Marine Air Ground Task Force,
It's a team effort.
like everything else in the Corps. And the commander plays a vital role in making sure there's support all throughout the operation.
Okay, so let's dive right in with a quote from General Zinni.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, he was talking about the Battle of Mogadishu. He described it as this, like, whirlwind of complex operations, amphibious landings, reliefs in place, even a non-combatant evacuation,
Wow.
all happening under enemy fire. Talk about a high-pressure situation.
That quote really hits home. These aren't just theoretical exercises. These skills can make the difference between mission success and failure in a real-world situation.
Right.
And Chapter 10 kicks off with passage of lines, and trust me, it's a lot more complicated than just walking through a door.
So passage of lines, I guess that's when one force moves through another force's combat positions,
Exactly.
either toward the enemy or away from them. It sounds simple enough when you say it like that, but I'm guessing there's a lot that could go wrong.
You're absolutely right. It's this really delicate dance. And the chapter stresses how much coordination is needed to prevent things like friendly fire.
Yeah, of course.
You have to think about it from your perspective. Imagine you're holding a defensive position, and a friendly unit needs to either reinforce you or fall back through your lines.
Yeah. Okay.
That's passage of lines in action.
I see how that could get pretty messy really quickly,
Oh.
especially under fire.
Oh.
So clear communication is essential. What about on the offensive side? When might passage of lines come up there?
Well, let's say your unit is pushing forward and another unit is providing flanking support.
Okay.
You might need to pass through their lines to reach your objective. And it all comes down to timing and this crystal clear transfer of responsibility from that stationary force to the moving force.
So there can't be any question about who's in charge at any given moment.
Precisely. Now, let's switch gears to another complex maneuver, link up.
Link up.
This is where two friendly forces, often from different units or even different branches of the military, they join up in hostile territory.
Okay.
So picture this, a helicopter-borne force landing right next to a ground unit, coordinating perfectly in the middle of all the chaos.
It's like something out of a movie.
It really is. And for it to work smoothly, the chapter highlights things like having designated link-up points, the role of the stationary force, and that absolutely critical need for coordinated fire support. And it's important to keep in mind the role of MedGTF enablers, especially when it comes to joint or multinational link-ups, where you might have different communication protocols.
So they're kind of like the glue that holds it all together.
Exactly.
It sounds like link-ups really require a lot of trust.
Oh, absolutely. Trust and interoperability between those forces involved.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Now, on to relief in place, or RIPTOA. And no, it's not a new combat exercise routine.
You mean like RIPTOA, relief in place, transfer of authority?
You got it. It's when one force takes over completely for another in a specific area, and that includes all the responsibilities and authority.
So you can't drop the baton.
Right. It's like a relay race.
Yeah.
You have to imagine trying to make that handover go smoothly without compromising the mission, especially when the enemy's putting on the pressure.
That sounds tough. Are there different ways to approach this?
Well, the chapter outlines two main types. You have simultaneous, which is faster, but obviously riskier. Okay.
And then there's staggered, which takes more time but can be more secure.
So it depends on the situation.
Exactly. And the level of risk the commander's willing to take.
It's a balance between speed and security.
Exactly.
What about obstacle crossing? Is that next?
That's next. And this is where things get really interesting.
You run into an obstacle, you find a way over it or around it.
It's not always that simple. The chapter defines obstacles pretty broadly, including anything natural or man-made that gets in your way. So we're talking rivers, minefields, fortified enemy positions, anything that can slow you down.
That's like a giant obstacle course.
Right.
Designed by the enemy. So what are the things Marines consider when planning an obstacle crossing?
Well, first, you have to decide. Bypass it if you can, or breach it if there's no way around.
Okay.
And that decision really hinges on good intelligence. You have to know what you're dealing with. And then the chapter emphasizes how vulnerable your forces are during that crossing.
Right.
So you need speed and decisive action, and that's where the ACE comes in.
The air combat element, what role do they play?
They can provide crucial support, suppressing enemy fire, clearing obstacles with airstrikes, or even transporting troops across tough terrain. Their capabilities are essential to keeping the momentum going and minimizing casualties.
So flexibility is key.
Absolutely.
What about breaching? Is that just a type of obstacle crossing?
It is. Breaching is all about creating that passage through or over an obstacle.
Right.
And there are two main types: hasty and deliberate. Hasty breaching is, as you might guess, quick and dirty. You use whatever you have on hand at that moment.
Like blowing a hole in a fence.
Exactly, when speed is everything.
Right.
But then you have deliberate breaching, which is more planned out, more methodical.
Okay.
You need more prep time and resources, but you get a more controlled and secure breakthrough. Like if you were clearing a path through a minefield, you don't want to rush that.
I can see why. So we've got passage of lines, link-ups, relief in place, obstacle crossing, and breaching. What else does Chapter 10 cover?
Next up, we get into river crossing, which has its own unique challenges.
Rivers can be pretty tough obstacles.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like the D-Day landings, crossing those beaches under fire.
Yeah.
River crossings today can't be any easier.
No, they're not. The chapter describes river crossings as complex offensive operations. They require detailed planning, special resources, and knowing the terrain like the back of your hand. You have to secure a beachhead on the far side and build up your combat power quickly.
Establish a foothold.
Exactly.
Lots of moving parts.
Definitely.
And high risk, I imagine. Okay, so what's next?
And finally, we come to one of the most intense scenarios you can imagine: breakout from encirclement. Think about your unit surrounded by enemy forces.
Uh-oh.
Resources dwindling, pressure mounting.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. What leads to a breakout?
Well, it could be a lack of resources, unfavorable terrain, or maybe you desperately need relief. Any of those could force a commander to make that tough call to fight their way out.
That takes guts.
It does, and in a breakout, speed and momentum are everything. If it fails, the force is in an even worse position. So the chapter really stresses the need for a well-organized breakout force.
Oh.
Clear objectives, designated support elements, and effective fire support from the MAD-GTF.
Even in the worst situations, the MAD-GTF can be a lifeline.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive into MCDP 10, Chapter 10. What are some of the key takeaways you want our listener to remember?
Well, Chapter 10 provides a framework for handling a ton of challenging tactical situations, but I think it really comes down to a few core principles.
Okay.
Meticulous planning, crystal clear communication, and the ability to adapt to whatever the situation throws at you.
So it's not just about knowing the tactics. It's about understanding MAD-GTF's capabilities and being able to think on your feet.
You hit the nail on the head. This isn't something you can just memorize by rote. You have to understand the why behind these tactics so you can apply them effectively in the chaos of battle. That's what makes the Marine Corps so formidable, that adaptability, overcoming any challenge, no matter how tough it gets.
It's like having all these tools in your mental toolbox.
Yeah.
You might not use every tool every time, but knowing they're there and how to use them,
Yeah.
that's what's important.
That's a great analogy. Now let's talk about formations, something you probably encounter every day.
Formations, you mean like on a parade ground?
Well, Chapter 11 in MCDP 10 actually goes deep on the role formations play in tactical success. And it goes way beyond just looking sharp.
Okay.
These formations directly affect how effective you are on the battlefield.
So how do you know which one to use? Is it like choosing the right tool?
Exactly. The chapter makes it clear that the mission, the terrain, and what the enemy is doing all dictate what formation you use.
So there's no like one size fits all.
No. You have to be adaptable and choose the formation that gives you the best edge.
Okay, so can you give me some examples? How are they actually used?
Sure. Let's start with the classic column formation. You know, the single file line.
Yeah.
The column is great for speed and control, especially when you're moving through tight spaces.
Like a forest.
Right. Or narrow streets.
But isn't that vulnerable to attack from the sides?
That's where the wedge formation comes in.
Hmm.
It gives you better security all around, like a shield protecting you from multiple directions.
Makes sense.
Then there's the line formation.
Yeah.
Ideal for maximum firepower, but you lose some mobility and depth.
So it's all trade-offs.
It is, weighing the pros and cons based on what's happening around you. And Chapter 11 goes beyond just static formations.
Oh, okay.
It covers techniques for advancing, maneuvering, and deploying.
So it's not just about getting somewhere, it's about how you get there.
Right. Maintaining unit cohesion and controlling the pace of movement.
Right, right. Makes sense.
And then you have bounding overwatch. That's a technique for advancing when you're under enemy fire.
Overwatch, I remember that.
Right.
Providing cover fire while another element moves.
Exactly. And bounding overwatch just takes that concept and makes it a continuous process.
Mhm.
Two or more elements alternating between providing cover and moving forward, like leapfrog.
So someone's always got your back.
Exactly. It lets the unit advance steadily while minimizing their exposure to enemy fire.
Smart.
And again, the chapter stresses how vital communication and coordination are.
Yeah, you got to know when to move, when to cover, and how to adapt if the enemy does something unexpected.
Absolutely. Now let's dig into another fundamental principle: fire and maneuver.
Fire and maneuver. I feel like that's like a core concept. I hear it all the time.
For good reason. It's a basic tactic.
Yeah.
Using firepower to suppress the enemy while you maneuver to get a better position.
So offense and defense kind of working together.
Exactly. And Chapter 12 breaks it down, starting with fire.
Fire.
It emphasizes the importance of accurate and effective fire, talking about different types: suppressive fire, destructive fire, and final protective fire.
So you're not just spraying and praying.
No, each type of fire has a purpose.
Okay.
Suppressive fire is about keeping the enemy's heads down so they can't shoot back effectively. Destructive fire eliminates specific targets like weapons or vehicles.
Yeah.
And final protective fire.
What's that?
That's your last line of defense, used at close range to break up enemy attacks.
So the right tool for the job, even when it comes to firepower.
Exactly.
What about the maneuver part? What are the key ideas there?
Speed, surprise, and flexibility.
Makes sense.
You got to move fast, adapt to changes, and outsmart your opponent.
It's like staying one step ahead.
Exactly. The chapter talks about flanking attacks, envelopment, and penetration. Flanking is hitting them from the side where they're weakened, envelopment is surrounding them, cutting off their escape, and penetration is punching through their defenses, breaking their lines, creating chaos.
It's almost like chess. You're anticipating their moves and trying to outmaneuver them.
You got it. And just like in chess, every move has to be coordinated. The fire element gives cover while the maneuver element advances, and vice versa.
Working together seamlessly.
Exactly. Which brings us to a crucial part of any operation: the fire support plan.
I'm guessing that's like a blueprint for using firepower effectively.
It is. And the chapter really emphasizes that it has to be integrated with the maneuver plan.
Okay.
They have to work together, making sure the firepower supports the maneuver elements and the other way around. It outlines the types of fire support you have available, the priority of targets, and when to engage them.
So it's like, if this happens, then we do this.
Right.
But it's not just about like firepower, right? You have to think about your own guys.
Absolutely. One crucial thing is the safety of your own forces. You don't want to hit your own troops. So the fire support plan includes ways to prevent that. It's this delicate balance between maximizing firepower and minimizing the risk to your own people.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but it's vital for the mission to succeed. Now let's transition to another critical aspect: reconnaissance and security.
The eyes and ears of any operation.
Exactly. Reconnaissance is about gathering information, sending out scouts to get a clear picture of the battlefield.
Okay.
And security is the flip side: protecting your forces from being attacked.
Creating that shield.
Right.
They kind of go together then.
They do. It's this feedback loop, making sure you understand the enemy and the terrain while keeping your guys safe. And that's what Chapter 13 is all about.
Okay. So what types of recon do Marines do?
You have route recon, where you scout a specific route looking for obstacles or enemy positions.
Okay.
Area recon, where you focus on a specific area like a village. And zone recon, which is the most extensive.
Covering a larger area.
Right, like a whole valley or a forest.
Like puzzle pieces, putting together the bigger picture.
Exactly. And then you have security, which is all about being proactive. The chapter stresses things like setting up a security perimeter, running patrols, and always being aware of what's going on around you.
You can't just wait for the enemy to attack.
Nope. You're actively looking for them, trying to stop them before they can even start.
Got it. So different types of security too.
You have local security, protecting your immediate position.
Like a patrol base.
Exactly. Then there's area security, which covers a larger area.
Like a base camp.
Right. And finally, route security, protecting specific routes for things like convoys.
Like a guardian angel watching over you.
That's a great way to put it. Now, let's talk about the defense.
The defense, isn't that just like digging in and waiting?
Well, Chapter 14 paints a much more active picture. It's about stopping the enemy from getting what they want,
Okay.
wearing them down, and buying time for your own forces to regroup or launch a counterattack.
So it's not passive.
No.
It's aggressive.
So what makes a defense successful? Preparation is key. Selecting a good position, building fortifications, setting up obstacles, and practicing those defensive plans. And as we talked about, security is vital.
Right.
Disrupting the enemy is also key. Using firepower, obstacles, and maneuver to break up their formations and keep them from achieving their goals.
You're like throwing everything at them.
You're making them fight on your terms. The chapter also talks about massing your forces at the decisive point to hit them with overwhelming force.
Right.
And of course, you got to be flexible. You need to adapt to what the enemy's doing, have backup plans, and be ready to adjust on the fly.
So stay proactive.
Exactly.
Okay, so are there different types of defensive operations?
There are. The chapter talks about 3: mobile defense, area defense, and retrograde.
Okay, tell me about them.
Mobile defense is the most fluid and aggressive, using maneuver to strike the enemy when and where you choose.
Hit them before they hit you.
Exactly. Area defense is more about holding specific terrain, digging in and defending that position. And retrograde is a controlled withdrawal, retreating without being routed. You're preserving your forces for later.
So how do you choose which one's right for the situation?
It depends on the enemy's capabilities, the terrain, and the overall mission. You analyze the situation and choose the type of defense that helps you achieve your objectives.
Makes sense. It's like making informed decisions based on what's going on.
Exactly. And the chapter outlines a 7-step planning process.
7 steps. Wow.
It all starts with a detailed estimate of the situation.
Gathering info.
Yeah, about the enemy, the terrain, the whole picture. Then you have mission analysis, breaking the mission down into smaller tasks, figuring out what needs to be done.
Okay, so those are like the first steps.
Right. Then you move on to course of action development.
What's that?
It's where you brainstorm different ways to accomplish the mission. You're evaluating what's feasible.
So like different paths to the same goal.
Exactly. And then you analyze those courses of action. You dig deep into each option, looking at strengths and weaknesses. You try to figure out which one has the best chance of succeeding.
That sounds important.
It is. It's about weighing the risks and benefits. Then you compare the different options side by side.
Like a pro-con list.
Yeah. And based on all the info you've gathered, you pick the best one.
Decision time.
It is. After that, you get approval from the commander, make sure everyone's on the same page. And finally, you produce orders. Clear, concise orders for your Marines, making sure everyone knows what to do.
It's like building a house, step by step.
I like that analogy.
So what about putting the plan into action?
Well, the chapter emphasizes that during execution, leadership, communication, and flexibility are critical. Leaders need to inspire their troops, set the example, and lead from the front. Communication keeps everyone informed and coordinated. And flexibility allows you to adapt to changes, seizing opportunities, and adjusting tactics as needed.
You got to roll with the punches.
Right. The chapter also highlights how important it is to keep morale up. Keeping your Marines' spirits high, making sure they believe they can win, that's vital for success.
It's a good reminder that battles aren't just about tactics, they're about people.
Absolutely. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin. The offense.
The offense, taking the fight to the enemy.
That's it. Chapter 15 calls the offense the decisive form of warfare.
Okay.
It's about imposing your will on the enemy, breaking their resistance, and achieving your objectives.
So what makes an offense successful?
Surprise. Hit them when and where they least expect it.
Yeah.
Concentrate your forces at the decisive point. Overwhelm them with combat power. Maintain a high tempo. Keep the pressure on, and don't let them regroup.
Keep them on their toes.
Right. The chapter also highlights audacity. Be bold, take calculated risks, and seize opportunities when they pop up.
Okay.
And when you break through, you have to exploit it. Pursue the enemy relentlessly and turn those tactical victories into strategic gains.
So it's not just about winning the battle, it's about what comes after.
Exactly. Now let's look at the types of offensive operations.
Okay. What are the main ones?
You have the movement to contact, the attack, the exploitation, and the pursuit.
Okay.
Movement to contact is the initial phase where you're trying to find the enemy.
Like sending out scouts.
Exactly. You're developing the situation. Then comes the attack, the main effort of the offense. You commit your main force to close with and destroy the enemy.
So that's the big fight.
It is. Then you have exploitation, where you take advantage of any breakthroughs, you chase the enemy and expand your gains.
Don't let them catch their breath.
Right, you turn a tactical win into a strategic one. And lastly, you have the pursuit, the relentless chase to finish the job.
So those all build on each other.
They do. And just like with the defense, the choice of which offensive operation to use depends on the enemy, the terrain, and your mission. You choose what gives you the best chance of winning.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the chapter emphasizes that planning for the offense follows the same 7 steps as the defense.
Oh, right, those steps.
It's the same framework, but applied to a different kind of operation.
Different goals, different considerations.
Right. And it's still crucial to involve your subordinates in the planning process.
Get everyone on board.
Exactly. Use their experience and knowledge, make sure everyone understands the plan and is committed to making it work.
It's a team effort, like we said.
Absolutely. And during execution, leadership, communication, and flexibility are still essential.
So the same things we talked about with the defense.
Right. Leaders inspire, communicate, and stay flexible. But maybe the most important thing in an offense is maintaining momentum. You have to keep the pressure on, exploit those breakthroughs, and don't let the enemy get back on their feet.
Keep pushing forward.
Exactly. Now let's move on to transitions.
Transitions, you mean between offense and defense?
That's right. Chapter 16 explores how to switch between those 2 modes of operation. It's a vital skill on the battlefield.
Makes sense. You can't always be attacking or always be defending.
Right. You have to be able to shift gears smoothly.
So what's important when you're transitioning?
Situational awareness. You need to know what's happening around you, where the enemy is, what they're doing, and what your own forces are up to.
Got it.
You also need to secure key terrain, controlling the battle space, and consolidating your gains. Regroup your forces, resupply, and get ready for what's next.
So you're always thinking ahead.
Always. Anticipating the enemy's next move and figuring out how to counter it. It's like chess, always a few moves ahead.
Yeah, I can see that.
And clear communication is crucial during transitions.
Makes sense.
Everyone needs to know what's going on, what their job is, and how the transition is going to happen. You want to keep things running smoothly.
So less confusion, more effectiveness.
Exactly. And the chapter outlines 3 main types of transitions: offense to defense, defense to offense, and relief in place.
Those first 2 seem pretty straightforward. What would make you switch from one to the other?
Well, a transition from offense to defense might happen if you've achieved your objectives.
Okay.
Or you've run into heavy resistance and need to regroup.
Adapt to the situation.
Right. And you might switch from defense to offense if you successfully repel an enemy attack. Or maybe you get reinforcements.
So you see an opening.
Exactly. You seize the initiative.
Makes sense.
Transitioning between these operations is tough.
Yeah, it sounds complicated.
It takes skilled leadership and well-trained Marines to pull it off.
Okay, so what's next?
Let's talk about urban operations. Fighting in cities and towns.
Urban warfare. That's got to be chaotic.
Chapter 17 dives into the unique challenges of urban operations. It's a different game than fighting in open terrain.
Okay, how so?
While cities offer cover for both sides, the battle space is 3-dimensional, and you often have civilians in the mix. It's a whole different ballgame.
So what are the key things to consider when fighting in cities?
Understanding the environment is crucial. You need to know the city layout, the types of buildings, the potential threats, how the terrain can help you or hurt you.
So you need to be really familiar with the area.
Yes. Planning and preparation are vital. Choose your objectives carefully, figure out your routes, and rehearse your tactics. And situational awareness is even more important in urban areas.
Why is that?
Visibility is limited, and the enemy can pop up anywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You have to be constantly alert. Controlling key terrain, like high buildings, bridges, and intersections, is also critical. And of course, you have to protect civilians.
That must be incredibly difficult.
It is. You're trying to achieve your military objectives while minimizing harm to innocent people. It's a delicate balance.
And the chapter says training for urban operations is super important.
Right. It's a specialized type of warfare. You need a different mindset, different skills.
So are there different phases to urban operations?
There are 4 main ones: isolate, secure a foothold, seize objectives, and consolidate and reorganize. The isolate phase focuses on cutting off the enemy's support.
Like their supplies and reinforcements.
Exactly. Then you secure a foothold. You establish a base of operations inside the city.
So getting a toehold in their territory.
Right. Then you seize your objectives.
Taking key enemy positions.
Right. And finally, you consolidate and reorganize.
Take a breather, regroup, and get ready for what's next.
Exactly. Urban operations are tough, but they're becoming more and more common in modern warfare.
It's something Marines need to be ready for.
Absolutely.
Okay, what else?
Let's switch gears again and talk about stability operations.
Stability operations.
It's about helping to stabilize a country or region after a conflict. You're restoring order, rebuilding infrastructure, and supporting a legitimate government.
Laying the groundwork for peace.
That's it. And Chapter 18 gets into the principles of stability operations.
Okay, so what's important to consider during stability operations?
You have to understand the whole situation, not just the terrain and the enemy, but also the politics, the social dynamics, the economy, the culture. You have to understand what's causing the instability.
It's like the big picture.
Exactly. Building relationships is also crucial. You have to work with local leaders and organizations, build partnerships, and create solutions together. It's not about imposing things from the outside.
Winning hearts and minds?
Exactly. Providing security is also key. You're protecting people from violence.
Making them feel safe.
Right. And supporting the government, helping to build institutions that work for the people.
So they can take care of their citizens.
Right. And promoting economic development is crucial too. You need to help people build a better future for themselves.
Stability isn't just about ending a conflict. It's about what comes after.
Absolutely. It's a challenging mission, but it's rewarding too. It requires a different mindset than traditional combat.
For sure. Okay, what's next?
Let's look ahead to the future operating environment, the challenges and opportunities that are coming down the road.
The future. That's a big topic.
It is. And Chapter 19 takes a deep dive into it, highlighting the key trends shaping the world and how they'll affect the way the Corps operates.
Okay, what are some of those trends?
Globalization is a big one.
The world's getting smaller.
Right. Things that happen in one place can affect the whole world. And technology is changing warfare rapidly.
That's always evolving.
Exactly. We're seeing huge advancements in computing, robotics, AI, and more. The battlefield of the future will be a lot more complex and technologically advanced.
Marines will need to adapt.
They will. They need to be able to use those technologies to their advantage, but also be ready to defend against them.
So it's a race to stay ahead. What other trends are there?
Weapons of mass destruction are a serious concern. They're becoming more accessible to more people, both states and non-state actors.
That's a scary thought.
It is, and it makes deterrence much harder.
Makes sense.
Climate change is another factor. It's changing the environment. The Marine Corps will have to operate in more challenging places. Flooded coasts, areas with droughts, places hit by extreme weather.
They'll have to adapt to the changing planet.
They will. And finally, there's the rise of non-state actors.
Like terrorist groups.
Yes, terrorists, insurgents, criminals, they're playing a bigger and bigger role in conflicts.
It's not traditional warfare anymore.
No, it's not. They operate differently, use different tactics, and the Marine Corps needs to be ready to fight a wider range of enemies.
So the future of warfare is going to look a lot different than the past.
It will. The future operating environment is full of challenges, but there are also opportunities. And the Marine Corps has always adapted to change.
They're committed to staying ahead of the game.
They are.
Okay, what's next?
Now let's talk about professional development.
Professional development, that's important for everyone.
It is. And Chapter 20 emphasizes how important it is for individual Marines and for the Corps as a whole.
So what are the key elements?
Education, training, and experience.
Makes sense.
Education gives you the basic knowledge and critical thinking skills you need. Training builds on that, giving you practical skills. And experience, both in training and real-world operations, puts it all to the test.
You learn, you train, and you put it into practice.
Exactly. The chapter also talks about mentorship and professional reading.
Okay.
Mentors can guide you, give you advice, and help you through your career. And reading keeps you up to date, exposes you to new ideas.
It's like always learning from others and from what you read.
Right. And finally, the chapter stresses self-reflection and self-improvement.
How do those fit in?
You need to be honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses, figure out where you need to improve, and take steps to do it.
It's taking responsibility for your own growth.
Exactly. It's a continuous process. You're always striving to be the best Marine you can be.
It's not just a job, it's a commitment.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's the last topic?
Leadership, the heart of everything the Marine Corps does.
It's what makes everything work.
Chapter 21 breaks down the principles of Marine Corps leadership.
Okay, what are the hallmarks of a good leader?
Integrity, courage, decisiveness, loyalty, and commitment to your Marines.
So those are the big ones.
Integrity is the foundation of trust. Courage lets you make tough choices and face danger head on. Decisiveness is crucial in the heat of the moment, and loyalty goes both ways.
You earn it by giving it.
Exactly. And a leader has to care for their Marines, look out for their well-being.
They're your responsibility.
They are. And the chapter emphasizes leading by example. Marines don't just follow orders blindly. They follow leaders who inspire them, who live those core values.
So actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. Communication and teamwork are also crucial for leadership.
Okay.
You have to communicate clearly with your Marines, give them guidance, and create that shared sense of purpose and build strong, cohesive teams.
Creating that positive environment.
Exactly. Leadership is tough, but it's also incredibly rewarding. You're inspiring others, overcoming challenges together, and making a real difference.
It's a privilege.
It is, and it's what makes the Marine Corps so special. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. From tactical operations to the future operating environment to professional development and leadership, we've looked at what makes the Marine Corps tick.
And I hope our listener has a better grasp of what it means to be a Marine and what they can expect in the future.
I think MCDP 10 is more than just a manual. It's like a roadmap to success and a testament to what makes the Marine Corps such a powerful force.
I agree. And this is just the starting point. Learning never stops. And MCDP 10 is just one resource among many.
You should keep studying it, talk about it with other Marines, and find ways to apply what you've learned.
The more you know, the better Marine you'll be, and the better prepared you'll be for whatever comes your way.
It's about taking care of your people.
Right. And the chapter also talks about leading by example. You know, Marines don't just follow orders because they're told to. They follow leaders who inspire them, leaders who live those core values and who are willing to share in the hardships and the risks.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. And good communication and teamwork are so important in leadership.
Okay.
You got to be able to communicate clearly with your Marines,
Right.
giving them clear orders, offering guidance, and fostering that sense of shared purpose.
Working towards the same goal.
Exactly. And building those strong, cohesive teams.
Makes a big difference.
It does. You create that positive command climate where everyone feels valued. Leadership is a tough job, but man, is it rewarding. You're inspiring people, overcoming challenges as a team, and really making a difference in the world.
Absolutely. It's a privilege to lead.
It is. And that's what makes the Marine Corps such a special organization. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into MCDP 10.
We have tactical operations, the future operating environment, professional development, and leadership.
We've really explored the core principles that guide the Marine Corps.
I hope our listener has a better understanding of what it means to be a Marine and what they might face in the future.
Me too. MCDP 10 is more than just a manual. It's a roadmap, a framework for thinking about warfare. And it really reflects those values and traditions that make the Corps such a powerful force.
It's a guidebook for success.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just the beginning. The learning never stops. MCEP 10 is just one resource among many for Marines who want to learn more about their profession.
Keep studying it, talk to your fellow Marines about it, and find opportunities to use what you've learned in your daily work and training.
The more you know, the better Marine you'll be, and the better prepared you'll be for anything the future holds.
As General Mattis once said, thanks to what you do, our citizens can sleep soundly, knowing that Marines stand ready to answer our nation's call, no matter where it comes from, no matter what time, no matter how tough.
Thank you for your service, and we wish you all the best in your journey as a United States Marine. Semper Fidelis.